Disclaimer: the content provided in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. While we discuss topics related to mental health advice, life wisdom, and alike, the opinions expressed are personal views of the hosts and do not constitute professional, legal, or medical advice. We make no representations or warranties about the accuracy or completeness of the information discussed. Any action you take based on the information in this podcast is strictly at your own risk, and we are not liable for any losses or damages in connection with its use. Additionally, this podcast may contain discussions around addictions, substances, which are intended for adult audiences. We do not endorse any illegal activities. Please consult your local laws before engaging in any actions related to this content. By listening to this podcast, you agree that you are over the age of 18 or the age of majority in your jurisdiction and understand the terms of this disclaimer.
Welcome to the Balancing Forces podcast, where two opposites collide in the best way possible. One brings the fire,
the other keeps it chill.
But together we share life's lessons, hard-earned wisdom,
advice you can actually use.
Whether you need a fresh perspective or just a laugh, we're here to elevate your mind. So buckle up, because things are about to get real and
really funny.
Chapter 17. When did you know? I had a client, a beautiful woman, late 30s, successful, never married, 2 kids, a mid-teens daughter, and a 20-something son. She'd reached the director's level of a mid-sized national company specializing in business consulting. She was on the marketing side and was very, very good at what she did. And, to her credit, she'd reached that level of competence and success without a college degree, a real self-made woman. Well, Louisa had been with this company for about 10 years when she got a new VP above her, and things began to go badly very quickly. Early on, he pushed her in ways that were neither productive nor necessary. He began taking credit for her work and undermining her in meetings. Before long, she went from working 9 hours a day to 15 to 16-hour days. She went from smoking a habit she had whittled down to 1 cigarette a day to up to a pack a day, and then a pack and a half a day. Louisa stopped having time for her boyfriend and was eventually leaving home before her daughter left for school and getting home after she was asleep. She started getting calls from her school informing her of discipline problems with her daughter, including smoking cigarettes and pot and even liquor in her locker. Yet, she couldn't bring herself to quit the job. She feared never again being able to reach the level of success she had. On only a high school diploma, surely she couldn't keep her big house, pool, and fancy car, she feared. She had to stay, had to endure. If she couldn't get a job at that level, she'd have to make do with less. Or worse, she'd have to start eating into her 401k and investments. Ugh. On top of this, she was a proud woman. The thought of losing everything she had built was too much to bear. It scared the bejesus out of her. But life didn't help her out. As time wore on, she ran out of time for her dear girlfriends, who had been her soulmates and biggest cheerleaders, and was even working on weekends. Over the course of the year after the new VP came, her weekends got chewed up with work. Her life had spun completely out of control, and slowly but surely, her energy deteriorated. She grew more fretful than she ever had before, and seemingly everything that could go wrong did, to the point where it all couldn't get any worse. Then it did, in the form of medical news. Her doctor had discovered both a spot on Louisa's lung and a hole in her heart. The unwanted became the inevitable. A year after the new VP's arrival, Louisa turned in her notice, completely spent. And her worst fears came true. Not only did she have to start eating into her investments to live, she couldn't find a lateral job, and worse, had no energy to even begin to do so. Wiped out, depressed, and full of fear, she spent her days largely in bed, relieved to be out of there and slowly resting and hopefully recovering, but she was still scared. About 9 months later, she ended up on my doorstep, needing counsel. Turns out, she knew a client I had formerly worked with and helped out of a similar spot. Extreme fatigue, extreme loss, extreme fear, and hopelessness. Louise and I worked together for about 2 to 3 months. The turnaround was quick. Her pain had gotten bad enough that her hunger for change had gotten big enough, and her resistance to new beliefs had gotten small enough that she was finally on the cusp of ready. Pain breeds hunger and courage. She was a gung-ho student, eager for change and growth. And, as the fates would have it, as a result of her hunger for change and willingness to go deep, within months, she was painting again, for the first time in 20 years. She began singing in a garage band for the first time in never, and decided to deliberately take more time off to not just rest her soul, but begin to more fully refine her true self. Happiness began to come to her life in ways that she had not experienced since childhood, though even greater than she had back then. Within months, while holding a garage sale with her daughter, she struck up a conversation with a man who would go on to become the great love of her life. Today, she and they live on a ranch in the southwest U.S. She is living a non-corporate life, constantly in nature and among my type of people, she reports. I don't know what she is doing for a living, but hers is a life that makes her ridiculously happy, and odd as it may seem, would not have come without the transformative fires that she went through. A lot of pain finally burned off of a life of not me, so that she could live up to her authentic me. But it was after that year of hell during our time and working together that I asked her the most critical question. When did you know? When did I know what? Louisa responded quizzically. When did you know it was time to go? Time to leave your job as it got worse and worse? Hmm. A long, slow smile came across her eyes and face. Sven, it's funny you ask. I knew after the first month. Well, isn't that interesting? I responded. I was just so scared. I knew I couldn't stay, but couldn't go. Yet I also knew it wouldn't change, no matter how hard I hoped. I guess I never realized, though, just how bad it would get. But heck yeah, I knew right away. I let that one sink in with her for a moment and then pressed. So, even though you knew you had to go, you stayed. You chose to not listen to your own inner voice. And that's a rookie mistake. That's the mistake we make hopefully less and less as we get further down the spiritual path. The mistake of choosing fear over our own inner sense of knowing our own intuition. I went on to explain that the universe is forever whispering to us. It is sending the tiniest pulse of knowing or calling to our conscious mind. It is the proverbial still, small voice thing. And yet, we don't listen. We ignore the voice, the vibe, the feel, the tiniest ping coming up from somewhere inside of us. God is forever trying to lead us to higher ground and greater abundance and happiness. But we so cling to what is safe and secure, even when we know it's not right. We hold on with all of our might and all of our fear to that which is behind us, still hoping it is our future, despite all the pain that it is bringing. But the gods will be heard. Your own soul will be heard. They will have their way. Your grip will be broken, as the old proverb goes. We make plans, God laughs. And so the gods conspire to make things worse. We say such naive things such as, well, it can't get any worse. And God giggles at being able to mess with you, some more to get you to let go of that which you think is secure, even while God is simultaneously exasperated that you're still missing the lesson. The gods basically stop whispering in that still small voice and start speaking in their inside voice, insisting on being heard. What was formerly a few things going wrong grows into more aspects of life coming apart and getting worse. Relationships tank. Time becomes short and stressed. Bad habits flourish. Louisa went from nearly completely kicking her habit to a pack and a half per day, an ungodly number of work hours, and less time and energy for her kids and friends. And yet, rather than let going of the safe and secure, we cling even more tightly to that which is behind us, dragging us down, rather than making the 180-degree turn and moving up the mountain to the new vistas. We hold fast to that which is sucking the very life from our soul. And so, quite amused, the gods do what gods do. They shout. They break you of your belief in the immortality of your knowledge. Your great strength becomes a weakness, insofar as it leads you to even greater pain and hardship being inflicted on you by life, by the universe, by the calling of your own soul. If you won't come quietly, they will drag you. The soul will be heard and heeded. They use the levers at their disposal to move you to where they want you to go, to a better life. Quite all of a sudden, your health breaks down and your worst fears start coming true. You are thrust into a reality that you could only imagine in a nightmare. This is precisely what happened to Louisa. Adamant about breaking her grip on the fear-driven life, her own soul, in conjunction with the universe, conjured a reality so powerful as to break down all of her pre-existing fears and beliefs. The pain had to get so bad as to break this fiercely driven woman and simultaneously give her the courage to walk into the very reality she feared most. And the point of all of it, I told her, It's not just to move you to higher ground and a more abundant life. The point and the goal of the spiritual life is to teach you communion with your own soul. You had been living a life for so long that simply was not you, and so your soul had to speak louder. It had to break you out of that prison of not you. There is no life until you have a relationship with your own self. To teach you that when you do not listen and trust in that inner pulse, that still small voice, things will get radically worse. The next time, listen and heed that inner voice, and perhaps just when it starts shouting rather than when it is in full throated fury. Then, perhaps a few times after that, you will listen to your inner voice when it's merely using its inside voice, when things have been going awry outside of you, but have not yet degenerated into a full blown madness. Then, eventually, you reach the point in the spiritual journey where you experience so many times the inner whisper not being listened to and your life getting whipped up into a tornado of hellish experiences that you begin to really listen for it and trust it. The goal of the spiritual life, the goal of communing with your own spirit, the goal of relationship with your own self is to hear that quiet voice, that quiet feel on your skin and in your chest, that ping rising up from the soul, the sense of knowing when it is soft and quiet. It is to have the courage to heed that quiet voice because you have too often experienced what happens when you don't. The louder and louder shouting of life, the breakdown of all that was, the stress, the anxiety, the pain, and the chaos. You know where life is going if you don't trust that quiet voice. You were raised to not trust your own voice. But the grand truth of the spiritual life and the grand truth of happiness is that there is no joy without the in-tuneness of listening to your own quiet inner voice, without it ever having to shout, then to have the courage to trustingly follow it, to act on it. That is what it means to live a spiritual life. It is to live in sacred trust with your own soul, your own intuition or instincts. It has nothing to do with beliefs in gods or gods, nothing to do with our afterlife or previous lives, nothing even to do with others. All of those questions are secondary, even tertiary, and between you and your God. There is no room for or even ability to truly draw close to the divine until you can draw close to your own self. This is between you and you. To love God is to live in a sacred trust in God's voice speaking quietly within. That which is truly you resonates deep inside of you. You know it. It feels right. When you hit the key on the piano, it lifts a hammer that strikes down a string on the key deep inside the piano. That string resonates with sound deep inside, just as the truth of who you are resonates deep inside when it is seen, heard, or felt. Distrust your own voice at your own peril, and the gods will kill you. Kill you, who you used to be. Kill what you are so feverishly and fearfully clinging to. Kill what you've become, distrusting yourself and from seeking the approval of others. There absolutely must be spiritual death before there can be new life. Creation is invariably preceded by destruction. Things must die for things to live. Furthermore, the greatest destruction necessary for happiness and fulfillment is the destruction of the belief that the quiet voice of your own soul cannot be trusted and leads to anywhere other than your highest good and highest greatest joy. How did she become this way? But where did it all come from? What caused Louisa or any of us to stop listening to that inner voice, such that the universe felt the need to shout at all? Louisa grew up in a family of 8. She was the youngest of 6 children. As I had grown up in exactly the same size family and position among my siblings, I could identify with Louisa. Though her problems was in no way only a last kid or big family problem, her situation was the result of a core belief that can be implanted in any person or any type of situation. Hers was just more obvious because of her particular family construction. Fundamentally, Louisa grew up never feeling heard or even much seen. Mom and dad had only so much love in the form of positive attention to give. Every human only has so much to give. Try to divide that between 6 kids, as well as a spouse, work needs, etc., and it can become very taxing on any person. If that text person already has a depleted love cup of their own coming into parenting, that makes for an even worse situation. The real short version is that Louisa grew up believing that the real her didn't matter. Her love cup was perennially empty. She barely existed. Like every kid, she so longed for praise and positive attention, but there was never enough to go around. She was somewhat raised by her siblings and her parents, but she was on her own a lot, which she admits has upsides. But by the time Louisa got into high school, she was staying out late at night, partying, and engaging in risky behaviors for a kid. She had given up on trying to be the perfect kid to get attention. Being perfect hadn't gotten her any extra portions of love. The situation had become so dire, mom and dad had become increasingly taxed and wrapped up in their own lives with little left to give to their kids, that she was not engaged in positive behaviors to get positive attention. Now she was just doing negative things, rebelling, and breaking all of the rules. See, if a person can't get positive attention, they will do and say things that on the surface just look like rebellion and are fundamentally attempts to get negative attention. Sound odd? It is, but it isn't. Why would anyone seek negative attention? Put downs, getting yelled at, scolding. Simple. Negative attention is never just directionless rebellion. In many, though not all, situations, negative attention is sought because negative attention is far, far better than no attention at all. The kid ain't aware that that's why they're doing it, but that's why they're doing it. Under the surface, the soul longs to, at the very, very least, be acknowledged. Someone getting no attention is fundamentally being told, you don't exist, which is synonymous with you don't matter. The optimum is to be told, you're great, you're good, you're important, you matter. The worst is to be told through someone's actions, I don't even see you, you don't exist. Thus, if you're not getting the optimum and your soul fears the worst, you will at least go for that bittersweet spot of negative attention in the middle that seems to create great havoc for others and only scorns for you. For negative attention is still attention. Existentially, it is a statement that you still exist, you matter. This is what Louisa did, or tried to do, but unfortunately her parents never yelled at her, rarely corrected her actions, and all around simply had nothing for her, except the occasional criticism of her decisions. Her mom, even well into Louisa's adulthood, had the unique gift of being able to know exactly what to say to deflate Louisa's balloon. No matter how good things were going, her mother could say something like, "But that's not that big of an accomplishment, is it?" Or, "Your boss probably didn't have anyone else to give that promotion to, did he?" Or, "But you're not really there for your kids." Or her mother could ask just the right questions to cause Louisa to go into constant permutations of second guessing herself. Do you really think that that's such a good idea, Louisa? Or, but you were never really good at this sort of thing, were you? It would be easy to say that Louisa's biggest problem was that she was put down and became self critical. That was indeed part of the problem. But the worst part for Louisa was not that she thought ill of herself, but that she had been taught to distrust her own voice, which was trying to get her out of a life that she hadn't even realized she was sick of, and that her own voice and her very existence didn't matter. Any kid who is not taught to hear and trust their own instincts will forever second guess their decisions and rarely act on what they truly want, not to mention forever be self critical and always seeking external advice. Add severe criticism, and that kid becomes hyper conscious of themselves, disinclined to take risks, and adverse to authentic self expression of any sort, not to mention deathly afraid of failure. But again, the self critical voice is not the most detrimental part. The worst part is not being able to hear one's own voice and or being strongly inclined to distrust it. As with Stefan in the previous chapter, the number one double CAA coach in his sport, Louisa has taught herself that her true self didn't matter or certainly was not good enough to be trusted. And it cost them both dearly for decades in adulthood. And because they wouldn't listen to the voice of their own soul, it had to get louder, make life worse, and eventually shout at them to change. The coach had to see a national championship, a rare enough opportunity in its own right, slip away before he was finally maddeningly so hungry for change that he was willing to look at his deepest truths. Louisa had to lose what seemed like her entire identity, life, and even her health before she was finally willing to listen. And listen they did. Change came quickly, lives changed quickly, happiness began to flood in quickly, and life looked very, very different, all because they finally chose to listen to the voice of their own soul. Book recommendation. A few years back, I fell in love with a particular chapter in a particular book because it so well explicates a concept I had been selling in my normal, rough-hewn way for years. This author does such a brilliant job of explaining this concept of listening to your body, i.e., intuition, and how it reveals your truth. May I strongly, strongly recommend the book, The Intuitive Way, The Definitive Guide to Increasing Your Awareness by Penny Pierce. In particular, Chapter 6, Hearing Your Body Talk, specifically the section titled The Sensitive Scale. Here's a tiny snippet from the book. By learning to absolutely trust your body's first response, you will find the guidance you get is high quality. Goethe said these deceptively simple words, just trust yourself, and then you will know how to live. Page 105.
How awesome is this? This is going to be the book we're going to be giving away. It is an autographed copy as well. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, share this out with your friends. At the end of the series, there will be a giveaway for a copy of your own book. Thank you.